Need for Speed Payback is the prime example of a low quality product, and this hurts to say. As a fan of the series since 2002, I've seen the series' ups and downs. After seeing Rivals and the reboot of the series, I was led to believe that the bad times and problems with Need for Speed were over, especially after Need for Speed 2015. While Need for Speed 2015 had its problems when it came to the physics and the police, in my opinion, 2015 was one of the best Need for Speed games in a long while. I wanted Ghost to successfully be able to pass the torch on from Need for Speed 2015 to Need for Speed Payback. I, along with most Need for Speed fans, thought that Payback would have been everything that made Need for Speed 2015 a great game, but more. However, sadly, this was not the case. Not even close. It honestly doesn't take too much to please me when it comes to any form of media, not just games. I enjoy a lot of music, movies, and games that were deemed bad by the masses. Like, I enjoy listening to some Nickelback, and I liked Mafia 3. So when I am not enjoying a game, it's either because it's either not my style, like a JRPG or puzzle game, or it's because it's something I really love, and it's very disappointing. Personally, if a game is bad, I can look past it, but if it's really disappointing, I'm left trying to figure out what went wrong. What could have been done to make it better? Instead of receiving a sense of joy from said game, I'm left getting frustrated and sometimes even angry every time I go on that game. That game is Need for Speed Payback. There are lots of differences between 2015 and Payback. One brings me a joyful experience whenever I go on it, and the other just gives me a frustrating and underwhelming experience whenever I go on it. Like I said earlier, I find joy in many games of lesser quality. This especially applies to the Need for Speed series. I can overlook a lot of flaws in Need for Speed games of the past and enjoy said games. I've had great fun in Need for Speed Shift 2, Need for Speed Nitro, hell, I've had a shit ton of fun in Need for Speed Rivals. I've even had a good share of fun in Need for Speed Payback. But the thing with the games I listed earlier is that whenever I go on them, I'm not playing the games and being frustrated with them. I'm leaving the game feeling better than when I went on that game. When putting down Payback, I feel shittier than when I picked it up. I feel angry, I feel underwhelmed, I feel like I need to say something, and I question if Ghost Games really knows what they're doing. Say what you want about Need for Speed 2015, but I loved that game. There was no Honeymoon Phase for that game for me, and if it was, that Honeymoon Phase is still ongoing today in 2018. I was not disappointed by Need for Speed 2015. Sure, there were a good amount of problems with the game, but at the end of the day, I had at least 1,000 hours of fun cruising around with my friends, racing on speedless, and helping my friends make montages and showcases. Need for Speed 2015 was such a solid base to build off of. The thing with Need for Speed 2015 is that while there are a lot of mechanisms in Need for Speed 2015 that could have been worked on more, there wasn't any design decisions that I would call into question. Just a lot of those decisions could have been worked on. With Payback, on the other hand, I'm calling out every new design decision into question. No free roaming police, no free roam multiplayer at launch, certain cars being locked at $2.99, etc. At this point of the essay you may be asking, what's my goal in writing this? Well, I want to let it be known that Ghost really messed up badly with Need for Speed Payback. I want them to know this and learn from this. I want them to know just how badly they dropped the ball so they can catch the ball in 2019. So thus, I will be going over every gripe I, along with many other people, have with Need for Speed Payback. And there are quite a lot. Too many, in fact. This is without a doubt my biggest gripe with Need for Speed Payback, so I will tackle it first. I've already said quite a lot about this flaw in nearly 5 videos already, but I will still go into full detail here. If you want to skip this part because I've talked about it how many times, I'll leave a little annotation to say, hey, skip to here. Now, let's start with the helicopter on the cover. Right smack in the middle of the cover. How often does that helicopter appear? For one mission, my friends. Only one mission. That is just straight up deceptive. Borderline false advertisement. It's saved by the fact that there is an appearance in the game, but only a singular appearance throughout the entire game. Also, it's scripted, just like this entire game. Remember kids, word of the day, scripted. We'll get back to this word later, but you will see it being thrown around here often throughout the essay. Now, let's move on to the actual police. I can honestly understand why Ghost Games opted for a more direct approach to police pursuits. They saw how the police in Free Roam in 2015 weren't the best, so they thought that if they separated the police to events, they would offer a more thrilling experience. I can understand their reasoning, but it's flawed. The police pursuits in Need for Speed Payback are thrilling for the first playthrough of the game, but after, say, maybe the third playthrough of any police event, you know when and where the police are going to spawn, and you know when and where the Rhino units are going to spawn, where the spike strips will be, etc. You already know where all the police traps will be, basically removing their element of surprise. So by the fifth playthrough of a police event, you know where everything is, thus making the chases less thrilling with each rerun. Everything is scripted. This even applies to bait crates. Each bait crate is just the same route, no change. To make matters worse, these bait crates seem to rarely spawn. What's the point of not having them permanent fixtures around the map? There is literally no good reason. To put it simply, bait crates in police events are simply not fun. They do not hold a candle to the amount of fun you can have with free roaming police. What is the point of flashing around all the cool toys that you have pre-launch during Gamescom when you are going to partition them off to a separate mode where you can't even toy around with them at your own leisure? You are practically held hostage by the time limit and GPS routes in these events. All of these advancements towards the police makes me wonder if this system was planned from the very beginning, or if it was implemented as a band-aid because they could not work the previous system from 2015, which was near perfect. The only thing lacking in that system was the cops who could actually drive over 10 miles an hour. But I digress. The Gamescom trailer for police led us all to believe that police would come after you during races, which was later revealed to be false. What's that? You say I can't judge a game based off of a trailer? Fine. How about this excerpt from Need for Speed 2017, Paying It Back? Whoop whoop! Let's talk about cops. There's nothing more satisfying than getting into a cop chase and feeling the heat on your tail as you tear it through the city. Cops in pursuit, racers up ahead, and then out of nowhere, BAM! They bring a Rhino to a street race. You got this? There is not a single moment in this game where the police in Need for Speed Payback chase after you during a street race. Not a single moment. At all. The only time police come after you during a non-police event is during the second leg of the Outlaws Rush, which is an off-road race. There are no races in the city where police chase after you, let alone there's barely any races in the city at all. Let alone any races where they bring a Rhino. This is just a straight up lie. But why lie? This leads me to believe that free roaming police were planned, but they had to be reworked to offer a more watered down experience to fit into Need for Speed Payback's release window, which I find disgusting. The heat system in 2015 would have worked great in Payback. Get the cops after you, pay a fine, and be on your way if you don't want to get into a chase, or risk it and run. But Jack, the house owns the police, simply pulling over would not work due to the story. Literally, if this is the argument against this system, I just don't care. Like, I'm all for a story in Need for Speed, but the story shall not eat the gameplay. More on to this later. What also leads me to believe that police were meant to be in free roam is the tier system. You have Crown Vics, Chargers, and Corvette cop cars, and a Ford police SUV in the game files. Corvettes for heat level 1-2, Chargers for heat level 3 and 4, and Corvettes for heat level 5+. They have the tools to implement free roaming police. They just didn't. As someone who plays Need for Speed Payback for the police chases, I detest this decision. This is a flaw. This is a terrible design decision. On a personal level, this is, I feel, the worst decision they made to Need for Speed Payback. I could honestly rant about the police in Need for Speed Payback all day if I really wanted to, and I'm sure I have. It angers me so much how Ghost Games just can't seem to implement a good police system all around, especially when they were so close with Need for Speed 2015. This seems to be a running theme when comparing Need for Speed 2015 and Need for Speed Payback. It's draining how Ghost has failed to deliver a proper police experience in 3 years. The multiplayer in Need for Speed Payback is very broken. I mean, literally unplayable at some times. Before I address the elephant in the room, free roaming multiplayer, I want to talk about speedless. I have a lot to talk about for both, but I want to preface this chapter by stating that there is just no excuse for lacking free roam at all at the very beginning, at launch. Multiplayer in a Need for Speed game is essential nowadays, especially when there was such a large part of multiplayer in the previous game. There is just no good excuse. You need free roam multiplayer in a Need for Speed game this day and age at launch, no exceptions. Now, I'll get back to free roaming multiplayer in just a bit. Speedless in 2015 were added as part of the last free update of that game's life cycle. While speedless were very raw and clunky, especially with 2015's physics, they were still great fun. Sure, the RSR dominated the speed lobbies and the Hurricane dominated the drift lobbies, but in the mixed speedless, you could bring anything and dominate the competition if you were good. Now, skill meant more in speedless back then. If you were good enough, you could win a highway battle with a Volvo against a Lamborghini. You can't say the same for speedless in Need for Speed Payback. One of Need for Speed 2015's main problems was its netcode and physics. When you add bad netcode and bad physics together, you don't really yield a proper result. As a result, this led to a lot of shadow ramming, where someone could be really close to another person and not hit them, and the person on the other end would be rammed and spun out by that player, but the player on the other end wasn't really even close to hitting them. While the physics in Need for Speed Payback are improved without a doubt, the netcode just simply is not. There is still a great deal of shadow ramming in speedless, along with actual ramming. In Payback, there are two different speedless lobbies, casual and ranked. I'm a pretty competitive person, so I was drawn to the ranked speedless, but all you have in ranked is people in Regeras ramming you left, right, and center. The Regera dominates speedless. Not really competitive if one car is able to kick everyone else's ass. Now, they did kind of fix this a bit with adding runner cars in. Runner cars are actually really fucking good. So if you want a fair chance to get a Regera, get a runner car. But there's still you can't take any car and dominate like you could in 2015. Also, you can't have a proper competitive race if the physics are still not proper for multiplayer and the netcode is still hot garbage, which isn't the case for speedless and Need for Speed Payback. All of the issues I addressed about ranked speedless can also be found in casual speedless as well. However, aside from that, ranked speedless as of the 20th of February 2018 and as of the 3rd of March 2018 when I'm recording this are just simply broken. Sometimes doing well in the speedless or simply winning at the speedless will lower your rank. How are you going to have a competitive racing scene when the ranks are just broken? To put it simply, you just can't. Shying away from competitive lobbies, now we're going to be talking about the issues the speedless have in general. Spoiler alert, there are a lot. To start off, the physics are just not suited for the type of racing going on in speedless. You're going to be going less than 100 feet between your opponents a lot of the time, especially when the race begins. This causes massive fuckfests at the beginning of every damn race. And the crappy netcode, it just escalates problems, I'm sorry. Now, not everyone in Need for Speed Payback wants to deal with off-road races. I think the vast majority of people do not like the off-road races in Need for Speed Payback. Not everyone wants to play drift races either. And there are some weird sect of people who only want to do off-road races. Why aren't there separate lobbies for each discipline? Have a separate lobby for only street races, have a lobby for only drift races, and have a lobby for only off-roading, and then have a mixed speed list for people who want them all. I know I don't ever want to touch off-road races, especially in speedless. I know a lot of people don't want to either. When I race in a Need for Speed game, I want to stick to the streets. Having a separate lobby system like this would allow like-minded people to race in lobbies which suit their needs. It wouldn't force people to manipulate the voting system to get their races selected. Speaking of the voting system in Need for Speed Payback is not a very good idea. It's a good idea on paper, but it's very flawed in execution. Giving the person in last on the speed list more votes is just asking for trolling. If you want your race pick, what you need to do is wait until the counter is almost up and then dump all of your race votes onto a single race to make sure no one contests your decision. This is a very flawed system. Everyone should just have one singular vote for a race, and the race with the most votes gets selected. If there is a tie, then you include a variable which selects one of the two races at random. Then, problem solved. Everyone is on the same playing field when it comes to votes. Now, I've said my piece about speedless, now it's time to move on to the free roam update. Up until recently, there was no free roam multiplayer in Need for Speed Payback. This is just plain unacceptable. One of the biggest draws to Need for Speed 2015 was being able to cruise around the map and goof around with your friends. In fact, before the speedless update, there was the multiplayer. You went around the map inviting your friends to races, and then you would all race. Simple. There was quite a lot you could do in Ventura Bay with your friends. Hell, you could even get into police chases with them, something you cannot absolutely do at all in Need for Speed Payback. But that was the past, and we do have free roam multiplayer now, and Ghosts have stated that they are rolling out free roam updates in phases. Right now, free roam is very bare bones. All you can do is cruise around with your friends and chill. That's literally it. You cannot do any pickup races, you cannot do any outrun challenges or pursuits with your friends. All you can do is visit the shops and drive around with your friends. Now, don't get me wrong, this is better than nothing, but damn man, Ghost has a, 2 years development time? Where the hell did that time go? Not towards the multiplayer, and that's for a damn sure. Now, right now, it's too little too late. All of my friends consider Need for Speed Payback dead. No one is really playing in my friend group. It really wouldn't be this way if we were all able to play together properly at launch. Multiplayer needs to be a big focus in Need for Speed 2019, or else the game will die off quicker than Payback did. I like story in video games. I feel like a story can bring me more into a game. The story doesn't really need to be that good to get me interested more in a game. I mean, hell, Need for Speed Rivals' story made me more interested in the game. It made me feel more immersed in the world. Even a small story like the one in Need for Speed Rivals can make me more engaged in a video game, even if it's one I can just turn off to after I complete it. Now, Need for Speed Payback's story is just that, a story I can turn off. It's not the worst in the series, but it's far from the best. The story is one of my neutral points with the game, but I still feel they can improve here. For starters, I really don't think they should focus too much on cutscenes and story as much as they did in Payback. Put less resources towards this and put them towards more content such as races, cars, customization, etc. One of the things I think Ghost really struggles with is resource management, but that's something I will tackle later. I honestly believe that Ghost focused on the story in Payback too much, and not really the gameplay. I feel like there wasn't as good of a balance as there were in games like Need for Speed 2015. The story was hot garbage in 2015, but the gameplay made up for it. No one I know plays Need for Speed for the story. We all play it for the gameplay. We play it to race and customize our cars with our friends, and overall just have a good time. The whole experience was possible with 2015. Throughout Need for Speed 2015's life cycle, even today, my friends and I still go on Need for Speed 2015 just to show off our cars, cruise around, and race, doing mountain battles down in El Rey or drag racing throughout the city. Payback focuses on story to the point where I feel like they want people to play the game for the story and not much else. Because of this, there isn't much in the way of content after the story. There is not much structured or unstructured content. In Need for Speed 2015, once you finished the story, you had a great amount of street races to finish. Plus, you had the online to cruise around it with race with your friends. You could make your own content pretty much in 2015. Want to do a mountain battle with your friend? Sure, go ahead. Want to do some drag races? Go ahead. Want to get into a cop chase with your friends? Why not? Even soon after the initial launch, we got Eddie's Challenge, which added 15 more races to do for free. Then a few months after that, we got the Speed List update. There never felt like there was a lack of things to do in Need for Speed 2015, at least personally from my point of view. Now, all that Payback has at launch, as well as nearly 4 months in, we only have Phase 1 of free roam multiplayer, which has no races, and we also have Speed Lists, which are broken and borderline unplayable at times, and the main story, which is single player only, which had until very recently broken autolog times. What Ghost really needs to focus on is delivering more things for us to do, especially when it comes to multiplayer. The simple fact of the matter is that there is a lack of content with Need for Speed Payback, even 4 months in. We already had 3+ content updates with Need for Speed 2015 in this time, which each added more things to do. The reason I feel like there's such a lack of content in this game is because Ghost put way too many resources into things that they shouldn't have, such as the story. I really think for Need for Speed 2019, Ghost needs to scale down on the story and focus more on delivering on gameplay. Ghost, if I'm correct, is nowhere near the size of Black Box's team, let alone Criterion's. They need to focus on delivering gameplay over a cool story. If Ghost had a much bigger team, Payback I feel would have been able to pull off the blockbuster story and deliver a much more satisfying gameplay experience. Now, let's move on to the atmosphere of the story. I respect Ghost for attempting to branch out and try different stories aside from just illegal street racing, but I really think this is the avenue they need to go down. The atmosphere in Need for Speed 2015 was one of its highlights. The game felt illegal, it felt underground. Need for Speed Payback's atmosphere, however, is severely lacking. Outside of the showcase heist missions and police events, the game does not feel illegal at all. The lack of free roaming police and races makes this game feel like a free roam version of Pro Street. Only Pro Street had the atmosphere down as well, but Payback's atmosphere, or lack thereof, only adds to the game feeling dead. Fortune Valley feels dead, when it should feel grimy, it should feel scummy. Vegas in real life feels like a grimy place, once you leave the main drag of the hotels and casinos. Fortune Valley feels as dead as Australia in Forza Horizon 3, and that's not a good thing. Atmosphere is something they really need to focus on more in Need for Speed 2019. The atmosphere made me fall in love with Ventura Bay. If Silver Rock City and Fortune Valley had the same atmosphere that Need for Speed 2015 had, then I feel like I'd be more willing to drive around and cruise around it. I just found myself fast traveling to races in Need for Speed Payback, while in Need for Speed 2015 I would more often drive to the races and cruise around. Need for Speed Payback not only feels like a downgrade from Need for Speed 2015, but it also looks like one too. Graphically on Xbox One and even on all Ultra on the PC, the game just does not look as good as 2015 did. The game looks downgraded to the point where it looks like a late stage PS3 game at times. It's not like Need for Speed Payback was put on a new engine or anything. Payback is running on Frostbite, the same engine that 2015 was. I think it's safe to say that this is the worst looking Frostbite game so far, and the worst looking Need for Speed game in the past 10 years. Not only on consoles, even on all Ultra on PC. I swear that Most Wanted, The Run, and even Hot Pursuit 2010 on PC looked better than Payback on PC. Why? I feel like the lack of atmosphere, rain or any weather, and the location makes the game just look worse. Firstly, the lack of a real atmosphere like we touched on in the last chapter plays a big part in this. I know that it's a bit of a meme at this point, but the rain in Need for Speed 2015 made the game look a lot better. I know that Silver Rock City is based off of Las Vegas and Las Vegas is in the desert, but can we have at least some weather effects sometimes? It doesn't have to be a complete copy. I mean, we can have some rain. It does rain in the desert sometimes, but look at games like Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, where it isn't raining all the time, but there are still some puddles on the roads. Stuff like that makes the game look a crap ton better. But I don't really think that the rain would be too much of a help, because a good deal of the time, especially when you first enter into the game and a while after that, the roads look like Play-Doh. They look untextured. So let me ask this. Why is this? Need for Speed 2015 never had this problem. Why does Need for Speed Payback? Another indication that points towards Need for Speed Payback feeling more like a beta rather than a full AAA game is the wraps. In Need for Speed 2015, there were never any major issues with the wraps, in terms of glitches or wraps not loading. In Need for Speed Payback, however, wraps don't load on my cars half the time. This is just plain unacceptable. Why are there so many glitches with everything? It seems like Ghost implemented a ton of stuff into this game that people never really wanted, such as off-roading, but then broke a lot of features that they needed to work on more from Need for Speed 2015. I really don't understand what Ghost's priorities were when it came to building this game. It feels like they were jet set on implementing a lot of new ideas into the game, but when it came to refining old mechanics such as police and wraps, they did not have enough time to fully refine them. Again, this leads me to believe that Ghost Games lacks proper resource management. Returning to the idea of Need for Speed Payback not being a true AAA game, there's an expectation with Need for Speed games that they act and look like AAA games. However, Need for Speed Payback looks more like a budget game that was developed in less than a year. And I mean, I know this isn't the case, but that's my first impression you get. Even from the loading picture, it's literally JPEG quality. Need for Speed Payback looks like a budget game that you bought for $30. It does not feel nor look like a AAA $60 game. While Need for Speed 2015 definitely looked the part 2 years earlier, I fail to understand why we are regressing when Need for Speed 2015 gave Ghost a strong base to develop upon, just like how Watch Dogs and Titanfall provided strong bases for even better games to be developed upon. The difference between those two games and Need for Speed Payback is that those two games saw what worked and what didn't work with their pilot games. They axed what didn't work and refined what did. I've played more Watch Dogs 2 than Titanfall 2, but having played both Watch Dogs games, I can easily tell that a lot of chief complaints from the first Watch Dogs were addressed and fixed in Watch Dogs 2. Most of the bad mechanics of Watch Dogs 1 were removed or fixed in Watch Dogs 2, and the new ideas were implemented to keep the game fresh, but yet still stayed to what made the first Watch Dogs game good. Need for Speed Payback did not do that. They did nearly the opposite. They implemented a lot of new ideas into the game first, then it seemed that they shoved in the old mechanics of the game after all the new ideas and mechanics were implemented into the game. But it's obvious they did not have the time and or the team to refine everything that needed fixing with Need for Speed Payback. And in return, the game came out looking, playing, and feeling worse than its predecessor, which is just a damn shame. I think at this point in my essay I've covered most of the major offenders when it comes to Need for Speed Payback. The rest of this essay will cover some of the minor things I have with this game, as well as talk about some ways to rectify some of the issues with Need for Speed 2019, because Ghost is probably starting work on the next Need for Speed game already. So now would be the time to start talking about those ideas. I'll be honest, I don't really care about microtransactions unless they interfere with the gameplay. Other than that, I don't mind microtransactions in games. An example of this would be the crew. There are two currencies in the crew, bucks and crew credits. Bucks are what you earn in-game, and crew credits are what you buy through microtransactions. In the crew, everything can be bought with either bucks or crew credits. but money is really easy to come by in the crew. Plus the game gives you 100,000 crew credits at the beginning of the game anyways. 4 years later and 1,000 hours into the crew, and I have yet to spend all of my crew credits the game has given me. Need for Speed can benefit from microtransactions if they are implemented in a way such as this, allowing anything to be bought with real-world money, but at the same time, not locking off anything to microtransactions. Need for Speed Payback fails at this. There is nothing in Need for Speed Payback that makes me want to buy with real-world money, but the whole card system just frustrates me. Basically, to get good parts for your car, until very recently, you had to grind out your car for hours before you could get it to max rank. Basically, if you wanted to get good parts that weren't available in the tune-up shop, you needed to spend roll credits on part rolls in a slot machine type gamble to see if you got said part or not. To be quite honest, it's really stupid. Where do you get roll credits? Shipments? How do you get shipments? Microtransactions. I will be fair, you do get a shit ton of shipments from playing the game, but I still find it stupid that you need a separate currency just to make upgrades to your car. What I also despise is the fact that you cannot obtain vanity items such as neons, bags, or tire smoke with in-game currency. You can only get them in shipments. This again is really stupid. I know Ghost Games is at the mercy of EA, so they need to shoehorn in microtransactions into the game somehow. What I felt they should have done is made everything in-game available to be bought with in-game currency and real-world currency, like the crew. This is what they should do with Need for Speed 2019 if they need to force microtransactions into the game. This way, people who want to get items in-game through in-game methods, they can, but if they want to get said items quickly with microtransactions, they can as well. I want to make it clear, I really like the music selection in Need for Speed Payback. I really like rock and grime music, and it's pretty safe to say that there is no lack of any of those two genres in this game. But I wouldn't go and say that there is a good mix of music, and definitely not as good as one as there should be. There is no metal music to begin with, and there seems to be a lack of D&B, electro, and all that type of popish music. But overall, personally, I like the soundtrack because I'm a rock guy. I like rock and metal music, but soundtracks are subjective and differ from person to person. However, I do feel there could be a better mix of music in this game. I'm not really the type of guy to really hone in on if the music fits in the game or not. One of the main complaints I hear is that the music doesn't really fit the game's theme. The music feels too happy for a game about getting revenge. I mean, I can see where people are coming from this argument. I like a lot of the songs in Payback, but there are quite a few songs that just don't really fit in the game. The characters could be talking about something serious in the game, and then a song comes on while they're talking, blaring, "Ah, na 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 na." This fits back into the atmosphere aspect. Need for Speed 2015 soundtrack was garbage, but the songs felt more in tone with the illegal, seedy underground aspect of the game. Then again, Ghost really has to find a balance of games that fit into the game, but are also good. I'd much rather prefer having good songs in the game rather than regardless if they fit or not. But I can understand the argument of having songs that fit into the game as a priority. Now, let's address the radio in-game. I don't understand why the music in the game is partitioned to different activities. It's been like this since Need for Speed Rivals. For example, certain songs only play in the garage, certain songs only play in races, etc., and we can't mix and match. Why is that? Why can't we filter songs we don't want out? Songs have been partitioned in Need for Speed since Need for Speed Rivals. We should have some sort of music player like in Midnight Club Los Angeles, or even better, bring back something like EA Tracks. What EA Tracks allowed you to do was sort and change when and what songs played. Nearly every Need for Speed game has had the option to change the music, dating back to Need for Speed, at least Need for Speed 2. Why can't we do this in Need for Speed Payback? Also, why can't we turn off the pursuit music? I've resorted to playing the Need for Speed Payback soundtrack on Spotify in the background when I play the game, but the fact of the matter is that I shouldn't have to resort to that. Plus, if you don't have Spotify Premium, you really can't do that as easily as I can. You can't just skip songs whenever you want, and there are ads. Plus, you can only shuffle play songs, so Spotify is not always a valid substitute. We should at least have some sort of option to choose when songs play. I want to listen to Kerala by Bonobo when I race. I can't unless I pop up with Spotify and play it, as that song only plays when you're in the garage. You shouldn't have to do that. There should be something in-game that does this. I briefly touched on the subject of Fash Traveling when I was talking about the quality of the game's world and how Fortune Valley feels dead to the point where I don't want to drive around that map. This isn't a new feeling that is only exclusive to Need for Speed Payback. I share the same convictions when it comes to Need for Speed Underground 2 as well. Anybody who knows me would know that I'm not really a big fan of Need for Speed Underground 2 that much. Never really was. More of an Underground 1 fan in my opinion, But this is beside the point I'm trying to make right now. Getting back on topic, Need for Speed Payback feels dead to the point where I don't feel like driving around in it. I want to be able to directly fast travel to events around the world. This is something I raised my voice on before the game even came out. I can understand Ghost wanting us to drive around to places. However, I feel that once you beat the game, you should just be able to fast travel wherever you want. Or if you discover the road that the event's on, you should be able to just fast travel anywhere in that road. There really is no reason to restrict fast traveling post-campaign. It just frustrates me and makes me not even want to bother driving to events which are out in the sticks, away from gas stations and shops. Speaking of shops, I'm not really a big fan of separating everything either. I liked everything in Need for Speed 2015 being in one centralized location. In Need for Speed Payback, everything is separated, requiring you to make several trips to build up a car. It's really not too big of a deal early game, but it becomes a pain in the ass later when you have all the money in the world and just want to buy a car, customize it, and then upgrade it. And we talked about upgrading before. No real reason to separate them. Why not have them all in the garage? Or maybe have the car dealerships, but then have the upgrades and customization in the garage. Like it was in Need for Speed Most Wanted 2005 and Need for Speed Carbon. I'd be fine with that as well. Off-roading itself is an issue in Need for Speed Payback. Off-roading just subtracts from this game to the point where I feel like it interferes with other features of the game. It appears to be that Ghost focused so much on off-roading that it left out other parts of the game to decay. What I mean by this is that Ghost put so much effort and resources into off-roading that the other aspects of the game, such as street racing and pursuits, because of this, they're lacking. This leads into Ghost's problems, again, with managing their resources, which we will touch on soon. I'm sorry, but off-roading just isn't fun. The physics just don't allow for a fun time while off-roading. It's like Need for Speed 2015's physics, but you have like no traction at all. Way worse. My first playthrough of this game was on hard, and the off-roading sections of this game were just awful. You don't feel like you're in control of your car half the time. That's a feeling you should never have in a racing game. Off-roading really shouldn't have been a priority when building this game. Off-road was not one of the biggest features people wanted in a Need for Speed game. I don't know about you, but I come to Need for Speed for street racing and police pursuits. Two fields that Need for Speed Payback lacks in a lot. I don't come to Need for Speed for off-roading, a field that Need for Speed Payback focuses on too much. I go to a game like Dirt if I want an off-roading experience. I would not shed a single tear if there was no off-roading in Need for Speed 2019. In fact, I'd be quite happy. It's unnecessary in a Need for Speed game. Need for Speed is all about illegal street racing, not off-roading. If off-roading were added in an expansion, then there really wouldn't be as much as an issue. But when developing a Need for Speed game, street racing should be the focus, not off-roading. First off, let's not get car classes confused with car tiers. I like the fact that cars are separated into different tiers. However, what's unacceptable is that not every car is able to be upgraded to a max level of 399. Even the cover car. The Nissan R34 cannot get to the max level. There is literally no point in restricting what rank cars can get to. If all cars could get into the max rank, then the tier system would be perfect. Now, let's talk about car classes. I am not a fan of the cars being separated into different classes. The classes being race, off-road, drag, drift, and runner. This gives the illusion of more content, but it ends up feeling everything is restricted. If you want a car for each of the 5 disciplines, then you would need to buy that car 5 times, and a lot of the time that car is not available for all 5 classes. If you want to take a certain car drifting, but it's not in the drifting spec, then you just can't. If you want to take a car such as the Hurricane at police events, you can't unless you mod the game. For some reason, not all the cars are available for each class, but someone found out that you can mod any car into a runner class with a bit of modding on PC. If that's the case, why can't we just without modding? Why are we restricted to which cars we can buy for which class? These unnecessary restrictions were not there in Need for Speed 2015, and I fail to understand why they are in Need for Speed Payback. I feel a better solution would be to have starter kits that you could apply to your car in order for it to be suitable for a certain type of race, such as a starter kit for drifting, drag, etc., and then have this alongside normal tuning. So if we really want to get into it, we can tune our cars to make them good at certain events or disciplines, or have them all well-rounders. But having to buy the same car over and over again, and have some not even be able to purchase is just plain dumb. I want to conclude this essay by talking about Ghost Games' problem with resource management, which has been a recurring theme throughout this essay. You can see evidence of this problem throughout the game, from the police being scaled down to bait crates and missions, and you can also see this by the fact that most of the elements of this game are scripted. Everything that should have been fixed and refined has been not, and there are unnecessary restrictions everywhere. Ghost Games does not have the team or the time to do what they feel like they properly wanted to do with Need for Speed Payback. They are too overambitious. They have a lot of neat and cool ideas, but they don't execute them well because they don't have the team Black Box had. They don't have nearly the amount of people that Black Box had. They don't have nearly the same numbers. This really puts into perspective just how much Ghost can really do with Need for Speed. I say that they could still do a lot. Need for Speed 2015 was such a solid base to build off of. I feel that if Need for Speed Payback built more of their game off of Need for Speed 2015, then I feel like Need for Speed Payback would not have felt as lackluster or as cheap as it does. If Ghost focused on what made Need for Speed games great first, and then worked on adding new features and activities after the fact, then I feel like we could have had a Need for Speed game that mirrors the jump in quality seen in games such as Watch Dogs 2 and Titanfall 2. Now, let's stop talking about what could have been. Payback could have been a great game. It could have been a lot better than it is, but Payback sadly is dead. There isn't too much Ghost Games can really do at this point to revive it. The only way forward with Need for Speed is with Need for Speed 2019. Hell, I would rather see an improved Need for Speed in 2018 if they could pull that off. Payback is such a dud that I would rather see a new Need for Speed game that focuses on street racing and car culture than a Payback 2. But then again, quality over quantity. But I'd rather have Ghost focus their attention towards developing a new game rather than to update Payback at this point. Just judging from the loading screen messages, I can infer that we are going to get a story expansion, or more. At this point, I really could care less. I'd rather have an update that focuses more on gameplay, not story. Ghost Games really needs to get their priorities straight, and I personally feel like Payback was a wake-up call to them. And if it is, it should be. I hope it was, because Payback is a dud. Coming from Need for Speed 2015, there was no good excuse for Need for Speed Payback being as dead as it is. It shouldn't take an essay that rivals the United States Constitution in word count to say that. You can see the lack of quality just by playing the game. And as someone who has stuck with the series through thick and thin, this is worrying. I'm not worried that Need for Speed will die though. Need for Speed has the advantage of pretty much being different racing games all united under one umbrella. Some Need for Speed games like Hot Pursuit have nothing to do with games like Need for Speed Underground. Need for Speed is a household name. It will be here for a while, but the devs who make the games won't. Ghost really needs to step it up with Need for Speed 2019, or they risk coming to the same fate as Black Box. And Black Box got axed after making Need for Speed a Run, which was a great game, so who knows when Papa EA will be putting Ghost in the crosshairs. But Ghost Games really needs to step up, and I'm saying this as a fan of the series for 16 plus years. I don't want to see Ghost fail. I want them to prosper and produce a game that can rival and outperform Need for Speed Most Wanted. 2005, that is. I feel that if Need for Speed 2015 was taken and built upon, then Need for Speed could return to its glory days. But if Ghost Games keeps producing duds like Need for Speed Payback, then the future of the series is looking bleak. This last bit is completely unscripted. This is just me talking right now. I just wanted to end this by saying that I feel like Ghost Games can really go ahead and make one of the best, if not the best, Need for Speed games to ever come out. I feel like they can rival what Black Box has done with the series, but I feel like they don't know which direction to go. They had such a good basis for where to go with Need for Speed 2015, but they just kind of they messed it up with Need for Speed Payback. They had all these different ideas that they wanted to put in the game, but they just decided they didn't want, they decided not to. They really don't know. I feel like they don't know where to go. And where they really should go, in my personal opinion, is with something like Need for Speed 2015. Need for Speed 2015, where it's illegal, dark, seedy, with free roam police, by the way. Still salty about that. I will forever be salty about that until the next Need for Speed game, where there better be free roam police. But I'm just saying, that personally, I feel like they should go to probably Japan, but also just anywhere where it's seedy, undergroundish, something like 2015, but built more upon. Take what made Need for Speed 2015 great and build upon that. That's really what they should do with Need for Speed 2019. That's what they should have done with Need for Speed 2017 Payback. And just really, I really want to make this video as like a guide to help guide Ghost Games into doing what they can do best, doing what they should do, doing what they ought to do, and that's just get rid of all the blockbuster shit. No one really cares too much about it. Only like young kids really do. Focus on what made Need for Speed great and enhance it. Work upon that. Build upon that. And then once you have all the fundamentals down, go ahead and redo it. I know Ghost Games can make a good game. They just haven't with Payback. They made a good game. 2015 was a good game. And I'm not counting Rivals because they had like, what, 3 months development time for that. But I'm just saying they really need to step up with Need for Speed, or they risk EA axing them, and that's it's simple as that. I mean, Payback just dead, and that's really all I can say. Other than that, thank you guys so much for tuning into my essay, very long essay. I know nobody on the Need for Speed subreddit wanted to read it because it was too long. Too long, can't read. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. Just out of passion, you know. I mean, I've been playing the series for like 16 plus years, so you know, I've been playing it since I was 2, so you know, so it's really, Need for Speed is a special place in my heart. And when times get rough, like, we really need to step up and say something. I mean, we did with Need for Speed Rivals, in the aftermath of Need for Speed Rivals, and result we got 2015. So if we step up and revolt, again, I don't want to use that word, but against Need for Speed Payback, then I feel like we can get an even better game in 2019. But anyway, that's all for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.